Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this can be my review for Boardwalk Empire, Season 5, Episode 7, Friendless Child. And this episode was crazy! Really, it was crazy, and I love that it was crazy. It was by far the best episode of the season so far. It was definitely very, very intense, and here's the thing with Boardwalk Empire. It's usually very intense, but this was a new kind of intense for Boardwalk Empire. I mean, this episode was completely intense throughout the entire episode. This episode was very, very dark. This episode had some parts that were very, there are actually parts in this episode that were kind of hard to watch. I mean, definitely, killing off those two characters have set a lot of darkness on this show, and it made me so hyped up for the finale, which is what a penultimate episode should do, and I can't wait for the series finale. I definitely can't wait for it, so let's just get to it. So if you remember at the end of last week's episode, Nucky, besides Chalky and Van dying, because that's what we remember basically, that's what we remember the most from last week's episode, that's what we remember the most, Nucky basically wanted to start a war, and we see right away that he has. You know, Robert Hodge, who is Willie Boss, he's delivering a radio broadcast on NBC, and he says, "We are at war against an army of hoodlums who made our streets unsafe for decent people." And this is really well done, actually, because we're seeing actual newspaper headlines, we're seeing actual photos. It really reminds us that these were real people, and I thought that was definitely very well done. We see photos of, like, all the people from the show that are actually real. It was very well done, definitely, and there's, like, this turf war going on, basically. And we see all these characters, Lucky Luciano, Maranzano, Lansky, and the doors are opening, and each of them are looking very alarmed. They're worried they're going to be the next to the bullet to the brain. They're very worried about what's going to happen to them. It's a very well done scene. I love the music they were playing too. The music was I like that music they were playing, because here's the thing. Boardwalk Empire doesn't really do a lot of background music. However, this episode, if they showed something that was real, they showed a lot of background music, and I thought it was really well done, definitely. It made things more intense, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So, then we see Willie in Hodge's office, and we thought that he was out, but they're putting him back in. So, he's possibly getting back into the gangster business, which is not good, because he essentially said to Nucky he did not want to be there. So, that's obviously not good. So we cut to Nucky's office in black and white and quickly switch to color. He pours himself a drink but decides against it, throwing his cigarette butt into the glass. Because if you remember, he said that he doesn't want to really do illegal things anymore. He doesn't want it. He wants to be more rational. And he's about to have a meeting with the old rumpus with Maranzano, and he's in a very bad mood. And he yells at Maranzano that there are 19 men dead between them, and at least $1 million in lost revenue. And he tells him he needs to go after, Luciano. But Maranzano, now, I thought Maranzano was dead, because that episode they made it seem like he was dead. However, we find out very quickly that Maranzano is definitely still alive. So Maranzano is urging him to stay calm, but Luciano will make a mistake. But then Mickey delivers some new tidbit, and 2 of their trucks have been firebombed, nearly $100,000 up in smoke. So Maranzano asks if they can get help from Nucky's friend in Chicago, but Nucky says that Capone has cut him off, basically. He's not really working for Capone as much anymore. Speaking of that, no Capone in this episode, which was really good. I was fine there was no Capone in this episode, because the thing that's going to happen with Capone in the finale is going to be really awesome, which we'll get to. But Maranzano says he will send more men to guard Nucky's trucks, and he gets up to leave. And then we see that new kid, Joe Harper. And he tells him he's cleaned off his windshield for him. And Maranzano hands him, Mickey ends up handing him a revolver. But Nucky tells him he's not a part of this. And I thought this was definitely very interesting, because basically Nucky doesn't want this kid to be involved in the war. And I think it's because he's not involved in the war already. He's a young kid, he's not someone he's very innocent, he hasn't done anything wrong. He does not want this kid to end up like him or any of them, so I think that definitely is very interesting. And I like seeing Nucky kind of sticking up for someone, definitely. I think it's definitely very well done. So, definitely, I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very well done. So Nucky tells Mickey to take Archie and Sean and head to New York City. And Nucky's got his own plans there. So then we see Bugsy Siegel, who, oh my god, Bugsy. Bugsy was hilarious in this episode. And one of the things I loved is that while this episode was so intense, Bugsy kept it going and he made it funny. And I definitely really enjoyed that he just made it funny because it was definitely funny. So he, back in his old Brooklyn neighborhood, was from Williamsburg. And basically, a woman answered the door, and when Bugsy asks where her husband is, she says the racetrack. They start kissing, and he's having an affair with someone's wife, because obviously he's married, though we don't know whose wife. We know it's not Luciano's wife, because this woman is Jewish, with a mezuzah on the front, on the door frame, and we're just basically trying to figure out who it is. So we flash back to old Atlantic City, and then we see Gillian as a girl taking a piece of Blackjack's chewing gum off Nucky's desk and picking up her copy of Nellie Bly's Around the World in 72 Days. Now, I gotta say, these flashbacks were probably the best flashbacks we've seen so far. It connected perfectly with the episode. It connected perfectly with what was going on, and I definitely really enjoyed that, and I definitely know where we're leading to now. So her face is very dirty, her red hair is very greasy, and Nucky walks in and makes her spit the gum out. And he takes the book and looks inside. On the inside cover, she's written a speech from the library of Gillian Darmody. And when he asks where her family is, she tells him it's rude to ask personal questions, just like the grown-up Gillian would, which she probably would. And he offers to help her, and she gives him her address, which is 915 Haddon Avenue. But there's no Haddon Avenue in Atlantic City, he says. But it's actually in Trenton. It's in, basically, it's in Trenton, and, basically, which is an orphanage, and he needs to take her there. So, back in our present world, we go back to the present, and Willie is very unhappy pulling files for his boss, Hodge. He has unofficially demoted him to clerk, and his associate, who is a young woman, also works for Hodge, sympathizes, but tells him this is all a little sensitive given your family background, and a call comes in for him, though we only mumbles can be heard on the other end. We know it's Eli, because we know that Willie is very, he hasn't seen Eli in a while, he's disappointed to hear from him, and Eli really, this whole episode is in very, very bad condition. Like, if you want to talk about people that are in bad condition, Eli is definitely in probably the worst condition right now, because Eli, this whole episode, he looks very, he looks poor in this episode. He looks like definitely someone who's suffering from the Great Depression. And definitely, we'll talk a little bit more about Eli later, but we then go back to Nucky and his wife Mabel, another flashback in the kitchen, and Gillian is staying with them. But Mabel asks Nucky why she ran off, and he says he doesn't know. And, she says how she must have a reason. And Nucky says how everyone has a reason. Murderers have reasons, which of course is the theme of the season. It's a backstory to why Nucky is here and why Gillian's in the insane asylum. Definitely, I thought that was really good that they're finally showing, what all these flashbacks mean. So Mabel wants Gillian to stay with them, but Nucky says he will take her back to the orphanage in the morning. And Mabel's kind of upset because she says, "What do you want from me?" He says, "I'm trying to do the right thing here." So Bugsy's rendezvous has come to an end. The girlfriend looks out the door to make sure the coast is clear. Bugsy leaves kissing his fingers and touching the mezuzah. And on the way down the tenement stairs, Bugsy bumps into the woman's husband, Morris. Now, Morris is thrilled to see Bugsy. Basically, Bugsy's now a gangster celebrity, and Bugsy lies and says he's collecting from one of the guys in the building. He's not saying what's actually going on here. So Morris asks him for an autograph for his wife Talia, who comes out to chat, and suddenly the hallway door bursts open. Sean starts shooting at Bugsy and uses Morris as a shield. Archie yells out that they want him alive. They chase him into Morris and Talia's apartment. There's a heated struggle on a fire escape, but wrestling back inside, Bugsy manages to stick a gun in Sean's mouth, blow out the back of his head off, and Archie grabs Bugsy, puts a knife to his throat, drags him down stairs by his ear, and Bugsy knows exactly whom he's dealing with and asks what he's done with Tonino's ear. So Morris, still alive, is whimpering on the stairs. So you can see a lot of this is when the episode definitely started to get really intense. I'm like, okay, definitely this is probably the most intense part I've seen Boardwalk Empire get. It was really good at this point. It was really awesome to see it be so intense, definitely. So we see another flashback, and Mabel has basically cleaned Gillian up. She's in a pink dress, and her hair is very combed, her face is cleaned, and Gillian's talking about how she wants to make amends for the things she stole. Basically she's saying how she's going to help around the house and help at school, but Nucky insists privately with Mabel that Gillian can't stay, and they have to return her to Trenton. They don't have the room, the money, or the right, he says, but Mabel won't take no for an answer. She says she'll find her a situation, and she pretty much wants to stay with her. She wants her to stay with them, and you can see definitely how interested Mabel is for her to stay with them. She really wants Gillian to stay with them, give her a proper home, and, I agree with Nucky, though. That's not their child. She can't stay there. She has a place to go to, and they need to take her there. So then we cut to a meeting in the present between Johnny, John Torrio, Lansky, and Luciano. So the phone rings and it's Bugsy. Bugsy is tied to a chair. He has a bullet wound in his legs, and he tells him he's in Atlantic City and has been kidnapped. Now, Luciano thinks he's joking around because he always jokes around, so he hangs up on him. But Nucky calls him back and confirms that, nope, he's telling the truth. So he puts Bugsy on the line. He says, they took me to see diving horse and everything. And he tells Luciano later on we're getting cotton candy. And Nucky gets back in the line and says he wants a meeting, but Luciano says he'll meet him at his funeral, which was definitely very big, and Nucky says he's going to go to Siegel's before his, and Luciano says, interesting proposition. He tells him he will think it over, so he hangs up. So Bugsy then goes, says he has to call his wife Esther so she doesn't worry, and then yaks on and on about how being a father in a couple of weeks, about cheating on his wife. I mean, seriously, he's really causing a lot of problems for himself. I mean, if Bugsy wanted to cause any problems for himself, he's doing it right now, like, seriously. So, the phone rings and Nucky grabs it, assuming it's Luciano, but it's actually Margaret. And Bugsy is really making a racket in the background. She asks what's going on. Nucky says they're rehearsing an act downstairs to shut Bugsy up, and Archie knocks him out with a sap. And Margaret tells Nucky his order's been confirmed to short $50,000 share of the Mayflower Grain Corporation, and he asks her to short another $50,000, but the market will notice. She says that's the point, he says, before telling her to take a short position herself. And Bugsy, meanwhile, is waking up, and Nucky says how he has to go because they're rehearsing again. And then Willie's on the street outside a courthouse, and he sees Eli, who, as I said, looks like a bum. He's in very bad condition, and Willie's not even going to shake his hand. And, Eli talks about how he screwed up and he got in over his head. Here's the thing with Willie that I thought was interesting. If you remember, he was very pissed at Nucky. Now, I thought it was because, Nucky is sort of replacing Eli, which was definitely very interesting. However, it doesn't seem like Willie really wants to talk to Eli right now because he's ashamed of Eli, which makes sense. Eli is pretty much an outlaw right now. Everybody hates him. Everybody wants to catch him. It makes sense why Jimmy wants nothing to... Jimmy. It makes sense why Willie wants nothing to do with him. Sorry, I was thinking of Jimmy Darmody from Season 1, sorry. Willie tells him to meet him tonight at his apartment, and he says, clean yourself up, get something to eat, and we'll sort it out, and he offers him money, but Eli refuses, and Willie asks if it's what he wants, and he basically says he told himself it was okay, it was worth it, and here he was at the right side of the street, and that's all. He walks away, Willie calls after him, and suddenly a car pulls up, and a couple men drag Willie inside, putting a satchel over his head, and this is when you know, okay, shit's definitely going down. So then we see another flashback at Nucky's place, and Gillian reads aloud from Around the World in 72 Days about Blythe's living out of such a satchel on her journey, but then she stops reading. And she says to Nucky to not send her, to not take her back. And Nucky says, who's going to look after you? And, basically Gillian says she'll be like Blythe, and Nucky asks, you can't live out of a satchel. And she said that Nellie did, but Nucky says, but she came home. And she offers to help Mabel when the baby comes. She's very scared. And Gillian says, you can see it, but please let me stay. So she tells Nucky about the orphanage, how they lock you in a room with no food or water, and tell you that your whole life is a sin, and you can never wash it away. And what's interesting is that, of course, she's in the asylum right now, and she's really in a bad condition. So I thought this was definitely a very interesting scene as sort of what's to come. So I definitely thought that was interesting. So there's a knock at the door, and it's Sheriff Lindsay, who asks Nucky to come with him, that he's needed on county business. He looks pretty grim, and Mabel says she'll look after her niece, who's visiting from Camden. So definitely that's very interesting. And then we come back, and Bugsy is singing this song that's like, it's my girl's pussy. That was hilarious. He's singing a very dirty song about his girlfriend's, cat, but he's not calling it a cat, he's just, his girlfriend's pussy. It was hilarious to see, because basically he's just trying to, cause a lot of ruckus, and it was very funny to watch. I definitely really enjoyed that, just absolutely hilarious. Mickey's pleading for someone to shut him up, and Nucky tells him to put a gag on him and make it tight. And suddenly, after 7 years on the lam, Eli shows up struggling with the bodyguards to get in the door. And Nucky said, you better have a goddamn reason for being anywhere near me. Now, of course, Eli has been in, basically, Nucky made that promise to those sheriffs, basically, that if he sees Eli, he will take him in. Nucky does not want to see Eli right now because it's just causing him too much stress. There's too much going on. He does not need to see Eli right now. So I thought this was definitely a very tense reunion because they haven't seen each other for 7 years, remember. So we cut to the satchel being pulled off of Willie's head by Luciano's men. Pinky, Lansky, and Luciano have kidnapped Willie, and naturally Luciano asks if he knows who he is, and Willie runs down a list of all of his aliases, and Lansky's as well, and he thinks Pinky is Bugsy, but they correct him and tells him he's not here right now, and Willie says sooner or later you're all going to jail. And he says, I don't want Willie to die, obviously. I don't think Willie's going to die, but I don't know who's going to die. Honestly, at this point, I have no idea who's going to die because they're really putting everyone in danger at this point. So, Luciano says he'll go over his job history a little bit later. And Lansky says he is his own boss, and he calls him Mr. Thompson. Nucky demands to talk to Luciano, and then talks to Willie, but Luciano tells him they'll talk in prison. So back to Sheriff Lindsay and Nucky, his deputy outside the Commodore's mansion. Lindsay is explaining how he ended up working for the Commodore, and how the Commodore told him he needed a reliable man. So he did one thing for him and then another, and Lindsay says, you said you wanted to help, here is opportunity. And Nucky asks, aren't you coming? And the sheriff says that he believes he's done. He takes his badge off, hands it to Nucky, and he rides off in his carriage. So Leander is standing on the stairs, and as Nucky walks into the mansion, a real Charles Foster Kane scenario. We see paintings and sculptures, in crates, and crystal chandelier tinkling, and he looks around wide-eyed and a bit scared, and he tells Leander the sheriff was feeling poorly. And he says this is a very private concern, and it goes without saying the direction is paramount. And the Commodore comes out of a room, pulling up one suspender, and he says, conduct yourself with honor, and we'll discuss what happens next. And Leander explains that the Commodore performing charitable acts for the community, enlisting children in service, schooling them in domestic arts. But sometimes things don't work out. And inside, in the room, is a little girl shaking with fear. Her arms are crossed tightly in front of her. And you can definitely see that this orphanage is definitely a very dangerous place. And basically, I was thinking Nucky's going to grab that girl and run away and never come back, but of course he has his reasons, and we know the story that follows is eventually going to lead to the next scene. So, then we see a cadre of armed men before a small fleet of cars with headlights. Mickey asks Nucky what he get, and I thought this scene was amazing. Definitely, this was probably one of my favorite scenes in Boardwalk Empire history. Just the way this scene was done was amazing. Mickey asks Nucky what he gets for sticking around, and Nucky asks him what he wants. And the club is a clear title and 5% of everything else, and Nucky agrees. And Mickey says he didn't think he'd say yes, and Nucky says he caught him in a good mood. And he asks Eli if he has a gun, but Eli says he doesn't have cigarettes. He doesn't even have cigarettes because, Eli is just in a very bad condition right now. And Luciano's men step out of the car fully armed with Willie, his hands tied behind his back, and the hostage swap is about to begin. Now, I honestly thought they were going to, shoot someone major in the scene. I thought someone major was going to die. And Nucky tells everyone to put the guns down. Bugsy sent over to the other side, his hands tied behind him as well. Willie begins to walk over. Bugsy limps over. Then he gets his hands free and punches Willie in the face. Guns are drawn. Eli lunges for Bugsy. He said, you're going to get us killed. And Nucky says to, basically, Bugsy's yelling that they'll bury Nucky and his whole family. Nucky said they had an agreement. Luciano says it's his business, and I want all of yours in the club, Cuba, and everything. So Luciano's definitely, he's the main villain in the show. So obviously he's causing a lot of problems for Nucky. So Mickey's getting nervous, trying to reason with Luciano about the club, but Luciano lifts his gun, shoots Mickey in the throat, and you knew that was coming. And Mickey has pretty much had it coming since the first time he appeared. They all draw their guns, shots ring out, total chaos, Archie goes down, but Nucky goes into the middle and tries to stop it. And I'm like, why is Nucky stopping this? I mean, definitely Nucky was being a very rational person this episode, and we kind of find out why. He ends up surrendering. He says, it's yours, everything's yours, let him go. But what they do not realize that Nucky's about to make a killing in the stock market. He's about to have all that money, basically. And that's basically why he's telling him, look, you can take it, we don't want it. And Luciano asks Lansky what he thinks, and he says, I think I'd like to see him on his knees. And Lansky says, now you know how it feels. And Nucky says, I underestimated you. You're much smarter than I gave you credit for. And Luciano asks what that makes him, and he says, Nucky says he's dumber than he knew. And Luciano says, good words for the headstones. And Bugsy's urging Luciano to just kill him, kill Willie, kill them all, grab it anyway. And Nucky says how that's not going to solve his problems, and his problem with Maranzano. And Luciano says he'll get to him. And Nucky says he's going to get to him first, but Nucky tells him to give him 24 hours to take care of it. He takes the risks, he lets him go. He nods towards his nephew, and Lansky whispers something to Luciano, who puts the gun down, and they shove Willie back into the car. And Luciano says how he's going to deliver, and they deliver. They drive off as Eli's asking why'd you just die? So Nucky answers he doesn't know. So we cut to D'Angelo, and this was definitely very interesting, because again, we did not see Capone for the whole episode. So, of course, this was a very interesting scene. And the other thing with Eli that is definitely very interesting is, of course, the reason Eli's also in such a bad, bad state is because he saw his friend Van die. Van died, of course, he saw Van die right in front of him. And the thing that was big with him seeing Van die is just, it's definitely affected him a lot, and it's affected him in every way possible, and it was definitely a very well done scene there. So we cut to D'Angelo and his associate, and they're telling a judge that Capone ended up making over $1 million between 1925 and 1929 and paid no taxes. So they have him on 22 counts of willful evasion and income taxes. They can trace the money, they have a witness, and can put him in jail, and the judge agrees to give them a search warrant. Now, this is intersped with 8 feds walking up a big stairway and then down a hallway, and then authoritatively walk into an office. And I thought this was definitely very interesting. I thought basically they were going to put Capone in jail. But it's for Maranzano, so I'm like, what? So, because, he's the rival. So Maranzano gets up from his desk, but instead of being handed a subpoena, he's stabbed in the gut, then in the back, then in the front again. He grabs a small statue of a Roman soldier sitting on his desk, falls onto the floor of his office, face up just like in the internet photos of his real corpse. And Eli finishes the job, and that was awesome because the condition that Eli was in, it was awesome to see him actually take some action and do something really drastic, and I thought that was awesome to watch. I love that when he did that. And, yeah, so that was definitely very awesome. So, yeah, Maranzano's dead. So, Willie's thrown out of a car, still alive, and he's rumpled and bloody, and he's outside the courthouse, and his female coworker, asks where he's been. She says maybe she shouldn't ask, so she tells him to get cleaned up, and Maranzano, she says, was murdered this afternoon. And meanwhile, Luciano and Lansky and Tori are meeting again to decide how to divvy up the spoils, and Luciano says to give AC to Pinky, and Torio tries to get into an organizing meeting and changes, but tell them that they'll handle it. And Bugsy is a black guy. He's already started celebrating, flanked by a couple of pretty moles. And he says to him, Luciano, this is going to be a good year. So Joe Harper comes into Nucky's office and asks if he can clean up. And he tells him to take out the empties and take out the booze. And Nucky says, you know what happened? And he says how you won. And basically, Joe asks, is the club staying open? And he says, ask the new boss. And because, the Empire might end up closing, basically. And Joe tells him that there are things he can do for him. He can sweep, and Nucky says how he can sweep the sand. And I thought that was definitely very interesting. He says, basically, he gives Joe $1,000. He says, go be a plumber, or a bookkeeper, or the president. Just take the money. And I thought this was very well done because, again, it shows how Nucky does not want him involved in this. He doesn't want him involved. He's a young kid. He has his whole life ahead of him. He does not want him to end up like he did, and he basically just wants him to be a normal kid. He doesn't want him involved with this gangster business. Because Nucky wants to make sure that he's ending this once and for all. So, we see another flashback that Nucky comes in late for his creepy new pedophile assistant job, and Mabel's making another pie, and he says business took longer than I expected, and he's very agitated. Gillian ran away while he was asleep, and he asks if she took anything with her. But Mabel's very angry and asks what he said to make her leave, but Nucky doesn't know anything about it, and he cries that she's a thief, and she says she was someone who needed help, and basically, Mabel's saying, I care about you, I care about the family we're going to have together, you can't fix everything. Mabel runs off, slams the door, and then we cut to Nucky, and I love the way the episode ends. We cut to Nucky, and we find out that, yes, that letter that he got was from Gillian with the return address of Nellie Bly. He opens it up, and this is basically what the letter says. It says, Dear Sheriff Enoch, you came to my aid once a very long time ago. I only did what I had to do to survive, making a devil's bargain. For the past 7 years I have been held captive. I feel as I am in hell, taking away one piece at a time. Show me the kindness now you once showed me as an orphan girl under the boardwalk. And she writes that he is the only one left who knows her, and she asks him to save her. And suddenly we see a young red-headed girl on the boardwalk in the dress Mabel once gave her, and she says, please help me. And that's basically how the episode ends. And I am so hyped up for the finale right now. Like, seriously, this episode was amazing. And, again, it really got me hyped up for the finale. Really made me interested in seeing what's going to happen in this finale. And we got to talk about it. Definitely a lot of things about this episode, definitely. So, first of all, is Nucky going to help Gillian? Because he has a lot of other problems to deal with here. He needs to He needs to figure out, who's going to buy the farm. He needs to figure that out. He needs to figure out, what he's going to do about the gangster business. If he's actually going to be able to make alcohol legal. I don't think he's going to be able to at this point. I don't know if Nicky's going to be able to get her out of the insane asylum because I think he's simply just too busy right now. I don't think that's going to actually happen, and if he didn't get her out of the insane asylum, I wouldn't be surprised. I just think he's a little bit too busy. So my other question is what's going to happen to Capone? Obviously, they killed Maranzano, so I don't know what's going to happen to Capone. I guess we'll just have to see what's going to happen to him. I do feel that Capone is definitely not going to make it out of this. I do feel that Capone is definitely going to go to jail, and I'm sure we'll see Capone again, definitely. My other thing is, we don't really know what happened to Nucky's wife, Mabel. We don't know what happened to her. So my question is she going to leave him? Is she going to die? What's really going to happen with her? Definitely that's going to be interesting. Is Nucky going to retrieve on that killing he makes on the stock market? I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen there. Is Joe Harper going to listen to Nucky, or is he actually going to try to get himself involved into this? I don't think he's going to. We'll have to see. Willie is involved now, so definitely Willie's involved. It's not good. And is Nucky going to try to get Willie involved at this? I feel Nucky's going to try to get everyone involved at this so he can just stop it once and for all. But I'm definitely liking the direction they're going, and I'm really looking forward to the series finale, and I personally just can't wait for it. I know it's going to be awesome. That's basically it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode, and I will see you guys in my next review, which will be my review for The Affair. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.